Hi, Kubi. Thank you so much for doing this interview with Score Notes, an internet-based media focused on film music and the film music industry. First of all, could you tell us about your background and how did you begin your career as a film composer?
I started my career as a composer a while back in the early 90s. I was an assistant to a composer by the name of David McHugh. I started working with him after I graduated in composition from CalArts. And I came to CalArts actually from Germany, where I grew up, and I studied music there. Then I
Oh,
went
cool.
to California to finish my degree. I got my master's at CalArts, and then David McHugh hired me as his assistant. And we worked mostly on made for TV movies. I helped him a little bit with a TV series that he did back then. And so those were my first steps into music for film and television. And then starting around the mid 90s, I started to try and branch out on my own, got my first few features, and then slowly went away from assisting and engineering into only I got started.
That's cool. So after you finished your master degree, you just settled down in United States and begin your career.
Yes, I have to say I got very lucky. I won the green card lottery.
Oh, that's cool.
And so, yeah, I had no
It's
idea.
pretty hard to get a green card
It
now.
is. It was then too, but I just got lucky. I found a lawyer who was from South Africa, and he was an immigrant himself, and he came to CalArts when I was still a student, talked about the green card lottery, and I decided to apply, and I won. So I still had to do a bunch of things, including finding somebody who would promise me full-time employment without knowing whether they could hire me. So, but that's how I found David. I was obviously then very aggressively searching for somebody who would hire me full time. And David and I got along really well. And so he made that promise to me and to the immigration. Um, and yeah. And then once we got through that whole thing, it took about 2 months. And then I had my green card and I could start working.
Oh, cool. Good to learn. So, I heard lots of your soundtracks. Lots of them are very hybrid and ambient. But recently, you scored a film named Gone Are the Days. And
Yes.
it's a Western film, right? And
Yes.
the score is very symphonic. And
Yep.
could you talk about that movie? And do you have a recording session on that?
Yes. I This is a film I did with a director who I have known for a long time. And he has done a lot of things, but this was his first feature film.
Right.
And so we always wanted to work together. And when this came about, we finally had the chance. Um, the idea for the score is we wanted the orchestral feel, but we did not want to do a full on Western orchestra score. And if except for the end title, which is really influenced by um, TV westerns from like the 60s, 50s, and 60s. But everything else is, let me backpedal. What we wanted to do is really portray the situation of the character. The main character in the film is an old outlaw
Right.
who is about to die, and he is living out his days on this really old ranch that is falling apart. And he is a remnant of the past. And so, and he is being taken over by the new era. And so um, we wanted to have something equivalent in the music. So as Talon, the main character, as he goes out and tries to like do one last big thing to right the wrongs of his past, the music that first portrays Talon is very traditional Americana music. It's basically solo banjo music played by a wonderful banjo player in LA named David Bragger, banjo and fiddle. And so it starts very, very simple folklore, Americana music. And then as Talon goes on his journey, and the journey isn't all exactly what it seems, I don't want to give too much away, but there are elements in there that you don't quite see initially, you don't quite figure out initially. And so as Talon goes on his journey, the orchestra comes in and sort of the TV Western comes in and plays him through the story. And then the big finale, the last 10 minutes pretty much of the film, are this really full chamber orchestra, really. It's a string section and four woodwinds, and still the banjo and still the fiddle, but now it's really a very artificial, mythological Western world that he gets to live out one last time. And it really plays around with the fact that Talon is the end of an old era that's being taken over by the modern world. And it also plays around with the fact that the Western, that old Western, the hero Western, the clean John Wayne Western, the TV Western, has been replaced by darker, grittier, more realistic genres. And so that's how that whole thing came about. We recorded the score here in Chicago, except for the banjo and the fiddle that was recorded in LA by David Bragger. And so we were on Skype a lot, just like we are now.
So
And
the banjo is a remote session, a remote recording session. Oh, cool.
Banjo, and he played beautiful. He has these banjos that are 100 years old that are made out of gourds. And he used all kinds of banjos and fiddle as well, quite a bit of fiddle.
Oh, cool. So let's talk about the music composition for the screen program in Columbia College, Chicago. So
yes,
you are the director, so you must be the best person to talk about this program. So why did you move to Chicago? Why did you begin to teach and direct this program in Chicago?
It's funny. It's the same person who got me my first job after my MFA ended up being the director here in Chicago, and he was getting ready to retire, and he wanted me to come out and look at the program. And to be perfectly honest, I had never thought of going into teaching. I was working in LA and I was not looking for a change in job my entire career. So I felt I couldn't say no. So I went and said, I'll come and look at it. And I was perfectly willing to come and say, thank you, but this is not for me. However, when I got here, I really fell in love with the program, and then more importantly, fell in love with what I saw were the possibilities. And so I accepted, and they hired me. And so I've been here now for 4 years and directing the program for 3.5. And I love how we do this program. It's the most practice focused and applicable program, I think, of the ones that are out there in the graduate programs. And this is really done on purpose. I wanted a program that coming from the industry, coming from working 20 years and still working, like Gone Are the Days came out when I was already that came out last May. So I was a director at that time for over 3 years. So I wanted a program that really spoke to what do you need to know when you're working. And so that's what we built here. And I'm very proud of the work that we do, and very happy that I get to do the work here in the program with our students and at the same time do my full time.
That's cool. So it's a very practical program, right?
Yes. The main difference of our program is that everything we look at are full-length projects. So people come in, it's a master's program, so you have to have an undergraduate degree in something. Most people, of course, have an undergraduate degree in music. And you have to prove coming in that you can handle working on a DAW, and that you can handle working with written music. I think it's impossible to get what you need to know in just 1 year, unless you're already very advanced. Um, but so it's a 2 year program, and in those 2 years, our students work entirely only on full projects, full length features, full length, TV pilots, plus maybe a couple of episodes, a full video game. And the idea is that you cannot, in any meaningful way, figure out how to score a scene if you don't know the full film. You have to know the full film. You have to know the full context. So we work on full-length projects. And the other thing that we do differently from other programs is we work on real projects the way they happened. So the only projects that I will work on with my students is, for instance, Gone Are the Days or Big Sur, because I know everything about that film. I know how it got to the point. I know which side stories were maybe first there but then got cut out. I know the director and what they liked or didn't like. So it's a very applied process. And so because I can, of course, only teach in this system, I can only teach the films that I score. We have our composers in residence. So we have different people come in and bring a film. And they work for 7 weeks with our composers on one of their films. So this fall, in 2 weeks, Peter Golub is going to come, and he's bringing a film that he did for HBO. And all our students for 7 weeks are going to work on the whole film with Peter Golub under his direction.
So the guest composer will stay there for 6 weeks with the students.
7 weeks.
7 weeks.
7 weeks.
Cool.
Yeah. And so you can do a whole chunk of the film, and you can certainly set up everything so that everything is about the whole concept. And then, of course, we do things, we bring in the real stories from what happened on the film. So, for instance, a couple of years ago, Jeff Grace came and he brought a film, Cold in July. And that film he scored. And when he scored that film, initially, the director wanted a Ry Cooder type, cool Americana score. And then about a third of the way through the process, the director changed his mind and said, no, we're going to do a John Carpenter 80s synth score. So, of course, that's exactly what we did with our students. They came in, we told them, guys, you're going to have to do a Ry Cooder type score. They worked on it for 3 weeks, and then we said, guess what? Change of direction. The director wants a John Carpenter synth score. And so we made them go through the same thing that Jeff had to go through in the real project. The only difference is, of course, we could say time out. And we could discuss, what do we do now? We can't just throw everything out and start from scratch. You're going to run out of time. How can you take what you worked on and salvage it and bring it into this new direction? So we do that with pretty much every project. We have a really good surprise planned, which I'm not going to talk about in case one of our composers watches this. But we have Brandon Campbell, who does a lot of work with Ramin Djawadi. And he has 2 films out. One's out and one's coming out called The Thinning. And he's going to bring a project where he went through some experiences, and we're going to have our composers go through that same experience as well. So it's about a ship or an assistantship, so that it's a real project, a full-length project, but it's about the student, the young composer, learning as much and driving as much themselves as they possibly can.
Cool.